This is the story of a royal dancing maiden, a girl whose joy lit up the royal kitchen, whose feet moved like the river breeze, and whose laughter echoed through the palace walls. But one day, she captured the heart of the prince of the land. What happened next shocked the entire kingdom. This is not just a story of love, it's a story of secrets, rejection, and a dance that brought healing. It's a tale that will make you smile, sigh, and maybe even shed a tear. So my people, get your popcorn, get comfortable, and let's dive into the world of Umudike. In a faraway corner of our beautiful kingdom, nestled between rolling green hills and a great winding river, lay the kingdom of Umudike. It was a land blessed with wealth and plenty. In Umudike, the soil was fertile and the farmers were proud, for their yam barns were always full after harvest, and their granaries overflowed with cassava, corn, and melons. Merchants from far lands came to trade goods in its bustling market square, exchanging salt, beads, and fine clothes for Umudike's prized harvest and crafts. You see, my dear friends, Umudike was known far and wide as a place of abundance and joy. Life in Umudike followed the gentle rhythm of nature. At sunrise, roosters crowed from every compound, waking the villagers to start their day. Men and women emerged from round mud huts with thatched roofs, greeting each other with warm smile and cheerful calls of "No, ụtụtụ ọma" in their language. The women, dressed in bright patterned wrappers, balanced clay water pots on their heads as they walked to the stream. The men took up their hoes and cutlasses and went off to the yam fields and cassava farms, their tools swishing through the rich earth. Children helped in little ways, chasing curious goats away from the crops or gathering firewood, all the while singing playful songs as the golden sun climbed the sky. In the evenings, after the hard work of the day, families gathered by crackling fires under the starry sky to share bowls of hot soup and folktales. Laughter and music mingled with the sweet aroma of simmering stew, filling the night air with warmth. In Umudike, they believed that a family who eats and laughs together stays together, and truly, there was always plenty of food and love to go round in that generous land. High on a hill at the center of the kingdom stood the royal palace, its walls made of red earth and decorated with carvings of proud leopards and mighty eagles. At dawn, the palace drummers would beat a gentle rhythm on their drums. Doom, 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 that doom, announcing the start of a new day in Umudike. And who lived inside the palace? Why none other than the royal family themselves. Let me tell you about them. In the palace of Umudike lived a wise and mighty ruler, King Obika. King Obika had a broad smile that could warm the coldest morning, and a hearty laugh that echoed through the palace halls whenever he was pleased. He cared deeply for his people and often walked among them in disguise to hear their troubles. It was said that he had the wisdom of an old tortoise, slow to speak but quick to think. However, King Obika carried one flaw in his otherwise kind heart. He was proud. He was proud of his kingdom's prosperity and proud of his own wisdom. So proud, in fact, that sometimes he refused to listen to advice from others, believing that a king must always know best. The elders of Umudike often whispered among themselves, "He who thinks he's above advice will stumble alone," warning that pride could blind even the wisest of men. But King Obika, in all his royal confidence, had yet to learn that lesson. By his side was Queen Nneka, a tall and graceful woman with eyes as sharp as an eagle's. Queen Nneka was strict and protective, especially concerning her children and the dignity of the royal household. She expected the palace to run like a well-tuned drum, with every servant doing their duty properly, and every prince or princesses behaving with perfect manners. If anything ever seemed out of place, Queen Nneka would arch an eyebrow and purse her lips in disapproval. Yet, beneath her stern look was a heart that fiercely loved her family. She guarded them like a mother hen watches over her chicks, ready to puff up and defend against any threat or misbehavior that came near. King Obika and Queen Nneka had 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son. The 3 older princesses, Princess Adaeze, Princess Adanna, and Princess Adako, took after their mother in many ways. They were elegant, well-mannered, and proud. Adaeze, the eldest, was confident and strong-willed, often acting like a second queen to her younger sisters. Adanna, the second, was clever and quick-tongued, always ready with a sharp remark, usually to tease her siblings. Adako, the third, was calm and soft-spoken. She loved music and could often be heard playing gentle tunes on her flute in the evenings. They all tried their best to behave as proper royal daughters should, following the queen's guidance in everything. Last of the princesses was the youngest daughter, Aduri. Princess Aduri was just 12 seasons old, 12 years by the count of rainy seasons, and had a heart as tender as a newborn lamb. Unlike her older sisters, Aduri was playful and curious. She loved to skip barefoot across the palace lawns, chasing butterflies, and she often sneaked out to the village to play with children who were not of royal blood, much to her mother's disapproval. Aduri had large, curious eyes that sparkled with kindness. She adored stories and music. She would beg the old storytellers in the village to repeat her favorite folk tales and could hum every palace lullaby by heart. Her sisters sometimes scolded her for being too friendly with the palace servants or for singing too loudly in the corridors, but Aduri would just laugh and twirl away. Deep down, she believed that everyone deserved kindness, whether they were royal or common, and she could not understand why her family was so strict about keeping distance from ordinary folk. And then there was the only son, Prince Obinna, the heir to the throne of Umudike. Prince Obinna was about 23 years old, brave, handsome, and humble. He had strong shoulders from training with the royal guards, but a gentle, thoughtful face. Obinna was curious and kind-hearted, often mingling with the common people in disguise to learn about their lives in the marketplace or on the farms. He admired his father's wisdom and loved his sisters, especially little Aduri, whom he would often carry on his shoulders to make her giggle. He respected his mother too, though he quietly disagreed with her strict rule of staying apart from the villagers. The people of Umudike adored Obinna for his friendly, adventurous spirit, and many believed he would be a just and good king one day. So, this was the royal family of Umudike, a wise but prideful king, a strict yet caring queen, 3 dutiful older princesses, one kind and spirited youngest princess, and a brave curious prince. They lived in a grand palace overlooking a prosperous kingdom. Little did they know that their lives were about to be changed by a most unusual visitor, someone who would bring both joy and trouble into their orderly world. It all began on a bright morning, just after the annual festival. The air was still festive and sweet. You could almost hear the echo of distant drums from the night before and smell the faint scent of fireworks. King Obika had enjoyed a great feast during the festival, tasting the best dishes from across Umudike. Oh, how the king loved good food. He often said that a well-cooked meal was the secret to a peaceful kingdom, because hungry bellies can make angry hearts. So, on this fresh morning, as sunlight streamed into the palace courtyard, King Obika declared, "Today, we shall find ourselves a new royal chef." You see, the old royal chef, a kindly man named Okongu, had just retired after many years of loyal service. His knees had grown weak and his hands unsteady. Though his heart wanted to continue cooking for the king, his body needed rest. The queen thanked Chef Okongu and sent him off with gifts and honor. Now, the palace kitchen needed a new master cook to prepare delicious meals for the royal family. Messengers were sent out across the kingdom, announcing that the palace sought the finest cook in Umudike. Soon, men and women who prided themselves on their cooking came flocking to the palace gates, each bringing a sample of their very best dish to impress the royal household. What a colorful scene it was in the palace courtyard that day. There were old women with baskets of secret herbs, middle-aged men with arms strong from pounding yam, and young apprentices eager to show their skills. They formed a long line, each waiting for a chance to present their dish to the king and queen. The royal family sat on an elevated terrace overlooking the courtyard. King Obidike and Queen Nneka on ornate chairs, with Prince Obinna and the princesses beside them. The 3 older princesses found themselves looking a bit bored in the late morning sun, while little Adul leaned over the railing as far as she dared, her eyes bright with excitement at all the bustle below. One after another, the cooks presented their dishes. Many were so nervous that their food turned out either bland or too salty. Some were overly confident, boasting loudly, but their words could not make their stews any tastier. Only a few dishes earned polite nods from the testers, and still none brought a real smile to the king's face or the prince's lips. As the afternoon sun grew hot and the princesses began to yawn, it seemed that no cook had truly impressed the royal family yet. Then came a young woman unlike any they had seen so far. She appeared quietly at the end of the line, carrying a simple clay pot that steamed gently and gave off an aroma so enticing it turned heads as she passed. She was tall and slender, dressed in a plain deep blue cotton dress. Her skin was the warm brown of roasted groundnuts, and her eyes sparkled like the reflections of stars on a calm river. A bright yellow scarf was tied around her head, but a few curly strands of hair escaped and danced in the breeze. The young woman's face glowed with a joyful smile, as if she carried a delightful secret. As she stepped forward towards the testing table, she did a little twirl. Imagine, a playful twirl in the royal courtyard, causing her skirt to flay lightly. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd of onlookers. Who was this cheerful dancing stranger at such a serious event? The girl set her clay pot down on the table before the king and queen and gave a respectful bow. "My name is Asamma, your majesties," she said in a melodic voice. Prince Obinna, who had grown rather listless from all the testing, suddenly sat up straighter, keenly interested. Queen Nneka raised one eyebrow at the newcomer's informal little twirl, finding it odd for someone seeking a job at the palace. But King Obika leaned forward, intrigued, as the delicious scent wafting from Asamma's pot reached his nose. Asamma carefully lifted the lid of her pot. A puff of steam floated up, carrying the rich aroma of tomatoes, fragrant basil, and a hint of smoky pepper. Those nearby couldn't help but breathe in deeply and smile. Even a couple of little birds perched on the palace wall chirped excitedly, as if the smell had delighted them too. With a grin, Asamma began to serve her stew into small tasting bowls, and as she did, something extraordinary happened. She started to hum a gentle tune. It was a soft, happy humming that made one think of sunny days and dancing shadows. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Asamma gave a light hop on one foot and began to sway her hips in time with her humming as she ladled out the stew. A few people in the courtyard giggled. Some looked perplexed. This was certainly not how one usually behaved in front of the royal family. But Asamma looked completely at ease, dancing lightly to her own music, as if she were cooking alone in her kitchen at home. Prince Obinna was utterly amused. A broad smile spread across his face. Aduri, from up on the terrace, had to clap a hand over her mouth to suppress a gleeful smile. Queen Nneka's mouth opened slightly in disbelief. No one had ever been so informal in her presence, but she was too curious about the stew's aroma to object just yet. King Obika chuckled low under his breath, finding this young woman's boldness interesting. Soon, bowls of the stew were placed in front of the king, the queen, the prince, and the royal steward, who led the testing panel. Asamma stepped back, still swaying happily side to side, and watched eagerly as the royals lifted their spoons. King Obika was the first to test. He blew gently on the steaming spoonful, then sipped. In that moment, his eyes lit up like a child who had discovered honey. "Ah!" he exclaimed, breaking into a wide grin. Immediately, he went for a second spoonful. Prince Obinna tasted the stew next and murmured in delight. The flavor was rich and perfectly spiced. The steward couldn't stop smiling as he tasted it. Finally, Queen Nneka brought a spoon to her lips, skeptical as she was of this dancer chef. The moment the stew touched her tongue, the queen's stern face softened in surprise. She closed her eyes to savor the taste and gave the tiniest nod of approval. A joyous murmur rose among the watching crowd. They could tell by the looks of pleasure on the royal faces that this stew was something special. King Obika stood up, still chuckling in satisfaction. "Young woman," he announced in a booming voice, "from this day on, you shall be the royal chef of Umudike." Cheers erupted in the courtyard. Asamma's smile stretched from ear to ear. She dropped into a grateful curtsy. "Thank you, your majesties," she said brightly. "I promise to cook with all my heart." Up on the terrace, Prince Obinna was clapping enthusiastically, and little Aduri jumped and clapped as well. The older princesses clapped politely, though Adeze and Adanna exchanged looks that said, well, they had never seen such behavior and they weren't entirely sure what to make of this Asamma. Queen Nneka managed a gracious, if slightly stiff smile. Inside, she felt a third uneasy. This girl certainly could cook, and her joyful manner was refreshing to the king. But dancing in the royal courtyard, that was something entirely new and, in the queen's opinion, not how a proper palace staff members should behave. Still, the decision was made, and Queen Nneka would not challenge the king in public. She simply made a mental note to keep a close eye on this mysterious young chef who had so suddenly appeared. As the crowd dispersed and the other cooks went home disappointed, though many of them admitted that the best chef had won, Asamma was led into the palace by the royal steward. Before she disappeared inside, she turned and gave one more playful little twirl and waved to the remaining onlookers. Aduri giggled and waved back excitedly. Prince Obinna found himself smiling yet again, and from her high seat, Queen Nneka narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. A girl who sings and dances while cooking. There was more to this Asamma that met the eye. The queen suspected. Nevertheless, the royal family of Umudike had a new chef, and palace life was about to get a lot more interesting. Asamma settled quickly into her new role. The very next day, the royal kitchen was more lively than anyone could remember. Usually, the kitchen was a quiet, disciplined place. Servants would chop vegetables or stir soup silently, while the old chef Okongo muttered instructions. But with Chef Asamma in charge, the kitchen became a place of music and laughter. At sunrise, Asamma was already awake, tying her wrapper around her waist and heating up the cooking fires. She had a habit of tapping her wooden spoon on the edges of pots to make a little beat, tap, tap, clang, as she cooked. She would hum or sing softly, and before long, the other kitchen helpers found themselves humming along. Imagine a line of maids and cooks chopping and stirring to a gentle rhythm. Early the next morning, Prince Obinna happened to walk by the kitchen and was drawn by the sound of a sweet song and the mouth-watering smell of something cooking. He peeked in and saw Asamma cheerfully stirring a pot of hot corn porridge. She was even swaying her hips as she cooked, singing a silly little rhyme under her breath. Chop the yam, stir the soup, sing it loud, whoop, whoop. Surprised and curious, the prince stepped into the kitchen to greet her and asked to taste the porridge. Asamma gladly offered him a spoonful. It was delicious, creamy with a hint of ginger and granules. Prince Obinna praised her cooking, and Asamma beamed, telling him a simple secret. She always cooked with joy in her heart. The prince left the kitchen smiling, already feeling great admiration for the new chef and the warmth she brought to the palace. However, Not everyone in the palace was as charmed by Asama's ways. A few hours later, when it was time for the royal family's breakfast, Asama's cheerful habits led to a bit of trouble. The family gathered in the grand dining hall. As usual, servants brought in trays of the morning meal that Asama had prepared. Golden corn porridge, fresh slices of mango and pineapple, and some meat pies for the king's hearty appetite. Asama herself carried a large serving bowl of porridge. She walked in with a polite smile, and although she tried to be as proper as possible, there was still a light spring in her step. After all, she was happy doing what she loved. As Asama placed the big bowl of the porridge on the dining table that morning, a bit of it accidentally sloshed over the rim onto the queen's pristine white tablecloth. Queen Nneka's eyes widened in disbelief. "What?" she exclaimed as she stood up, glaring at the little mess. Poor Asama's heart nearly stopped. She grabbed a cloth and quickly tried to blot the spill. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty," she stammered, bowing her head in apology. Queen Nneka fixed the young chef with a stern stare. "In the royal palace, we do not skip and dance while carrying the breakfast. You must be careful and respectful. Do you understand?" she scolded sharply. Yes, Your Majesty. It will not happen again," Asama whispered, her cheeks hot with embarrassment. Little Aduri piped up softly. "Mama, it was just a small accident. The porridge smells so good. Please, let's just eat. I'm sure Asama didn't mean to spill it." She gave her mother a big pleading smile. The queen pursed her lips, then finally sighed and sat down. "Very well," she said grudgingly, "but let this be the last time such carelessness happens." With that, the royal family turned their attention to the meal. The tension eased as everyone tasted the porridge and found it delicious. King Obika, after a few spoonfuls, let out a hearty laugh. "Aha! Perhaps a little dancing does add some flavor," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Queen Nneka said nothing, but she secretly enjoyed the food, for she took another gentle sip with a nod of approval. The three older princesses exchanged disapproving glances among themselves, but remained silent and dignified. Aduri, on the other hand, gave Asama a warm, encouraging grin. She even asked for a second helping. Asama served the young princess another bowl, very careful this time. Seeing Aduri's delight, Asama felt her own spirit lift again. Despite the small mishap, the king was pleased with the meal, and breakfast ended on a better note for everyone. After breakfast, as the family went about their day, everyone in the palace seemed to be talking about the new chef. Even the palace guards and servants were amused. Some guards chuckled that they had never seen anyone dance in the queen's kitchen before, and a few maids found themselves humming the chef's cheerful song as they walked. In the village market, word also spread about the dancing cook. Some villagers laughed and said they wished to taste her food, while others shook their heads, saying the palace was no place for such antics. Within the palace that afternoon, the three older princesses sat together in the royal gardens under the shade of a flowering frangipani tree. They spoke in low, disapproving tones about the new chef. Princess Adeze declared that she did not like Asama's behavior at all. Adanna agreed, saying the girl was far too familiar and bold for a servant. She even dared to smile and chatter freely in front of the prince. The third sister, Adako, quietly nodded along. They decided among themselves that Asama needed to remember her place. They planned to speak to Queen Nneka about their concerns, for they could not imagine a mere cook growing too close to their royal family. Meanwhile, Princess Aduri was indeed not in the garden with her sisters. As her siblings suspected, Aduri had quietly slipped away as soon as she could and made her way back towards the palace kitchens. She had been completely enchanted by Asama's lively, kind spirit. Aduri peeked into the kitchen and found Asama kneading dough to bake bread for the evening meal. To Aduri's delight, Asama was softly singing a different tune now, something old and soothing, a lullaby that village mothers often sang to their babies about yams growing and the moon glowing. For a moment, Aduri simply listened, a smile on her face. She gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. "That's a beautiful song," Aduri said quietly, so as not to startle her. Asama looked up from the dove, and a big smile spread across her face when she saw the princess. "Thank you, Princess Aduri," she said, giving a little curtsy. "It's a song my grandmother taught me when I was little. She used to sing it while pounding yam to make the work feel easier." Aduri edged closer, fascinated. "Would you teach it to me?" she asked eagerly. "I love songs and stories. My tutors only ever teach the boring royal songs, not fun ones like yours." Asama beamed and said the lullaby was indeed taught to her by her grandmother to make hard work feel lighter. When she offered to teach it to Aduri, the young princess jumped with excitement. Aduri eagerly exclaimed that she much preferred these fun village songs over the stiff tunes her tutors taught. For a short while, they stood side by side in the warm kitchen, kneading dough together. Asama quietly taught Aduri the words of the lullaby, and the princess repeated them happily. Their soft voices mingled in sweet harmony as they giggled and walked. In that moment, they looked as comfortable as two sisters cooking together, rather than a princess and a servant. However, from just outside the kitchen door, someone else was watching this friendly scene with sharp eyes. Queen Nneka had been passing by on her routine inspection of the palace when she heard the gentle humming and a familiar little laugh, Aduri's laugh, coming from the kitchen. Now the queen stood in the doorway, unnoticed by the two inside, and observed her youngest daughter and the new chef singing and kneading dough, flour dusting both their hands. Queen Nneka's face was unreadable, but she did not look pleased. Without saying a word, the queen stepped away as quiet as she had come. But in her heart, she felt concerned. This would not do, she thought. It was one thing for Asama to be friendly, but getting too close with a princess was entirely another. Aduri was supposed to learn music from distinguished tutors, not from a kitchen girl. And who knew what this Asama's intentions were? Being so sweet with the young princess, the protective mother in Queen Nneka bristled. She decided she would have to keep a much closer watch on Asama. She would also remind Aduri about proper boundaries, gently of course, for Aduri was her baby, but firmly. And so, by the end of Asama's very first day in the palace, different hearts were feeling very difficult about the new chef. King Obika was delighted to have such a talented cook, bringing delicious joy to his table. Prince Obinna was quietly impressed and found himself looking forward to any chance of crossing paths with the cheerful Asama. Little Aduri was absolutely enchanted and already thought of Asamma as a new friend and sister in spirit. But Queen Nneka and the older princesses were far from enchanted. In the queen's chambers that evening, Queen Nneka and Princess Adaeze had a private talk. They spoke in low concerned whispers about Asamma, how she was too bold, how Aduri was already attached to her, and how even Obinna seemed to be paying the new chef special attention. The queen resolved to gather more information about Asamma's background. She wanted to know who this girl really was and whether any trouble might follow her. Adaeze agreed wholeheartedly, secretly hoping they might find some reason to send Asamma away from the palace if she proved to be a nuisance. That night, the palace of Umudike lay quiet under the silver light of the moon. The crickets in the bushes sang their nightly chorus, and a soft breeze crept through the courtyards, rustling the leaves of the plantain trees. Prince Obinna found himself restless in his chambers. He stepped out onto his balcony, which overlooked the moonlit palace gardens. He gazed at the sky deep in thought. His mind kept wandering to the events of the day, especially to a certain cheerful chef. He remembered Asamma's bright smile as she sang in the morning, and the determined, apologetic look on her face when his mother scolded her at breakfast. He thought of how kindly she spoke to Aduri and how even now, after such a long day, he could faintly hear a gentle humming from somewhere near the kitchens. Was Asamma still awake, singing to herself? Unable to resist his curiosity, Obinna decided to take a small walk, being careful not to alert the guards, for they might fuss if they saw the prince wandering at night. He wrapped a simple cloak over his night tunic and slipped down a side stairway into the quiet palace grounds, guided by the faint glow of the moon. He walked toward the corridor that led to the servants' quarters by the kitchen. Sure enough, as he neared the kitchen building, he heard a soft humming carried on the breeze. It was coming from a small open window, the window of Asamma's little room, he realized. Obinna approached quietly. Through the window, he could see Asamma. She was sitting on a wooden stool by her bedside, bathed in gentle lamplight, gazing out of the window at the same moonlit sky. In her hands, she held a small carving of a bird, perhaps a keepsake, and she was humming a lullaby that she had taught Aduri earlier in the day. Patience, my child, sweet blessings will flow. The song was so soft and full of feeling that Obinna felt his heart relax just listening to it. He lightly cleared his throat to announce his presence, not wanting to startle her. Asamma turned a bit surprised, and when she saw the prince, she immediately stood up. "Your Highness," she whispered, a mix of curiosity and concern on her face. It was certainly unusual to see the prince at her window at such an hour. "I'm sorry to disturb you," Prince Obinna said quietly, mindful of the sleeping palace. He smiled. "I was out for a walk and heard that beautiful song. I remembered it from this afternoon. You sing it so nicely." Asamma blushed, just a little, and smiled back. "Thank you, Prince Obinna. I didn't think anyone was listening. It's just a lullaby my grandmother taught me." For a quiet moment, the two young people simply looked at each other in the gentle moonlight. The prince, feeling a bit bold, spoke what was on his mind. "You know, the palace already feels different, in a good way, since you arrived. I haven't heard music in the kitchen or seen Aduri so excited. And, well, ever," he chuckled softly. "You bring a light here, Asamma." Asama's eyes widened in surprise at the compliment, and she ducked her head bashfully. That's very kind of you to say, Prince. I'm happy here. I know I'm just a chef, but I truly love what I do. And little Aduri has been such a delight to me too. She hesitated, then added, I've been a traveler for a while, so it feels good to have a home and people to care for. A traveler? Obinna found himself intrigued. Have you been to so many places? Asama nodded slightly. I have wandered through a few kingdoms and villages, learning recipes and songs wherever I go. She offered a cryptic little smile. Maybe one day I will tell your highness all about them. For now, I'm grateful to be in Umudike. Your family has been very kind to me. The prince leaned a bit on the low garden wall under her window. You earned that kindness. Your cooking, I have never tasted anything like that. And the way you make everyone around you smile, that's a special gift. Asama met his eyes, and Obinna noticed they shone with a warmth and sincerity that made his heart skip just a bit. My mother always said, Asama whispered, that joy is the best ingredient in any recipe. Maybe that's why I put a lot of joy into what I cook. The boy shared a quiet laugh at that. The prince felt as if he were speaking with an old friend, even though he had only just met Asama the day before. There was something about her that was so genuine and comforting. Before they could continue, a distant voice of a guard on the far end of the courtyard called out as part of his nightly round. Prince Obinna straightened up. He knew he should return to his chambers before he was missed. It's late, he said gently. I should let you rest. Thank you for the song, Asama. Asama gave a small bow of her head. Good night, Prince Obinna, she replied softly. Sleep well, and you as well. Obinna answered. He lingered a moment, as if wanting to say more, but then smiled and turned to go. As he walked back into the shadows of the palace, he realized he was grinning to himself. Up above, in a high window of the royal quarters, a curtain shifted. Queen Nneka, unable to sleep from the worries gnawing at her, had risen to get a drink of water. In the stillness of the night, she caught a glimpse of her son's figure moving across the courtyard. The queen's eyes narrowed as she saw Obinna quietly re-enter the palace from the direction of the kitchen. What was the prince doing near the kitchen at this time of the night? She wondered. Her heart pricked with a new worry, and she resolved, even more firmly now, to keep an eye on both her son and the new chef. So, it was that under the light of the moon, new bonds were forming even as new tensions were brewing in Umudike. In her little room, Asama finally lay down to sleep, hugging a small pillow and feeling happy, but also a touch wistful, for in her humming and storytelling, there lingered hints of a past she had not yet shared. In his chamber, Prince Obinna drifted into slumber with thoughts of a laughing girl who stirred her pot with a dance. Queen Nneka stayed awake a while longer, gazing at the moon and praying silently that she could protect her family from any coming troubles. And somewhere in the hush of night, fate itself watched over the kingdom of Umudike, smiling at the stirrings of love and change that had begun with the arrival of a dancing chef. The sun had barely risen over the red earth of Umudike when Asama quietly entered the royal kitchen. In the dim morning light, she moved with gentle purpose, her wooden spoon stirring the air as well as the pot of pepper soup bubbling over the fire. Asama's voice, soft and melodious, hummed an old village song. As she cooked. The tune drifted through the corridors like a morning breeze. Unknown to her, The young prince had woken early too, drawn by the delicate song and the delicious aroma wafting from the kitchen. He found himself following the scent and sound. He paused at the doorway, watching quietly. There stood Asama, the humble chef, with skin aglow in the heart's light. Completely unaware of her royal observer, the prince's heart warmed at the sight. "Good morning, Asama," the prince greeted, stepping into the kitchen with a warm smile. Asama nearly dropped her spoon in surprise. "Ah, good morning, my prince," she replied quickly, bowing her head. Her cheeks flushed with a shy smile as she realized he had been listening to her song. The prince inhaled deeply. "That smells wonderful. You always make the tastiest pepper soup in all the kingdoms," he said, nodding toward the simmering pot. His eyes sparkled, and Asama couldn't help but smile proudly. She handed him a small wooden spoon for a taste. "Careful, it's hot," she cautioned gently. He sipped the broth and closed his eyes in delight. Perfect," he murmured, but a second later, his eyes flew open as the chili pepper hit his tongue like a tiny flame. The prince coughed and fanned his mouth. Asama giggled before clapping a hand over her mouth. "Oh, I'm sorry, Your Highness. I'm sorry," she apologized, wide-eyed, but the prince was already laughing with her. No, it's my fault. I should have listened when you said it was hot," he said, waving his hand as he chuckled. They laughed together, the gentle sound of their laughter filling the empty kitchen. In that moment, a quiet ease grew between them. The prince leaned against the table, watching Asama stir a few herbs. "You have a lovely voice," he said, referring to her humming earlier. "My father always said that secret ingredient is love, and I can tell you pour love into everything you do." Asama's eyes shone. "Thank you, my prince," she said, almost in a whisper. No one outside her family had ever praised her singing or her cooking like that. She felt a flutter in her chest. Was it happiness or something more? She quickly focused on her pot to hide the tears of joy that dared to gather. The prince, too, felt something new blooming in his heart like a morning flower. He cleared his throat and straightened. "I should let you walk. You have a long day ahead. The elders are visiting father today," he said reluctantly. He hesitated, then added with a playful grin, "I'm looking forward to the breakfast, especially the soup." Asama beamed. "It will be an honor to serve you all, Your Highness," she replied. As the prince left, he gave one last glance over his shoulder. She was still smiling to herself, a soft smile that made his own heart soar. That morning at breakfast, the king and the entire royal family gathered in the grand hall to eat. Servants laid out various dishes, and at the center was Asama's special pepper soup, fragrant with spices. The prince could hardly wait to taste it again, now that it was fully ready. When everyone was seated, the king declared, "Let's thank the gods for this food." Asama stood by the doorway with the other servants, hands clasped, hoping her cooking would please them. She watched nervously as bowls of her pepper soup were served to the king, the queen, prince, and the 4 princesses. The king took a sip and sighed happily. "Ah, this is excellent. Our new royal chef has true talent," he boomed. "Our new chef has true talent, Ezioku." Asama's heart swelled with pride at the praise. The prince gave her a secret thumbs up from across the room, causing her cheeks to warm. However, not everyone was pleased. The queen pursed her lips after tasting a spoonful. Her eyes flicked to Asama, and a shadow of disapproval crossed her face. The first princess, her eldest daughter, noticed and raised an eyebrow. The prince, noticing the queen's frown, spoke up cheerfully, "Mother, Isn't the soup wonderful? I just say it's the best I've ever had. He smiled in Asama's direction. The queen's spoon paused mid-air. Two of the older princesses exchanged looks. The queen forced a tight smile and said, "It's quite spicy." With that, she set her spoon down, dabbing her mouth with a silk napkin as if the food were barely passable. The king raised an eyebrow at his wife's tone. "Nonsense, it's delicious," he said, taking another hearty gulp. "If a lion can swallow a cow, a little pepper is nothing." He laughed, and some elders seated nearby chuckled as well, appreciating the king's humor and the fine meal. Asama tried to hide her grin, but the queen's face had gone cold, and she quietly pushed her bowl away. One by one, the first three princesses did the same in silent protest, their expressions mirroring their mother's disapproval. Only Aduri, the youngest princess, continued to sip the soup happily. In fact, Aduri licked her lips and said aloud, "I love it. May I have some more, please?" Which made the king laugh and nod in approval. The queen, however, had had enough. Without a word, she stood up from the table. Her chair scraped loudly on the polished floor. "I've lost my appetite," she declared, voice sharp. With a regal tone, she swept out of the dining hall, her eldest three daughters following like a train of bitter shadows. A heavy silence fell. Asama felt her heart beating fast. Had she done something wrong? The king cleared his throat and signaled for the musicians in the corner to play something light to dispel the awkwardness. The sweet notes of a choral harp filled the air, and gradually the meal resumed, though the queen's absence loomed like a cloud. From his seat, the prince caught Asama's eye. He gave her a reassuring nod and a gentle smile, as if to say, "Don't worry." Yet Asama could not shake the unease that settled in her stomach. She excused herself back to the kitchen, her mind swelling. The royal family's reactions were as different as night and day. The king and prince enjoyed her cooking. Aduri loved it. But the queen and the older princesses, their eyes had been like cold stones. Little did Asama know that very morning's meal had lit a new fire of jealousy in the palace, one that would soon threaten to burn everything she held there. The queen's footsteps echoed like thunder as she marched down the corridor, her fine silk wrapper swishing angrily. The three older princesses followed close behind, struggling to keep up with their mother's furious pace. Once they were safely in the queen's private chambers, the queen spun around, face tight with anger. She hissed, "Did you see how your father and brother found over that girl's soup? Over her?" The queen's voice was as sharp as a knife. Her eldest daughter, Princess Adeze, folded her arms. "I've never been so offended on her behalf, mother," Adeze said, nose in the air, praising a commoner's cooking as if she were some royal dignitary. The second daughter, Princess Adana, chimed in with a score. "The way the prince smiles at her, it's improper. She's just a cook." The third princess, Adako, tossed her braided hair and added, "He even gave her a thumbs up during breakfast. In front of us. The disrespect." Adako looked as if she had bitten into a very sour fruit. The queen narrowed her eyes, recalling the scene. "My own son, contradicting me publicly to praise that chef," she muttered bitterly. "This is beyond tolerable." Her pride was stung deeply. Queen Nneka was used to being the most respected woman in the palace. Now, a mere kitchen girl threatened that position. How unintentionally. Princess Adeze stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Mother, Something must be done. If we do nothing, Asama will continue to win their favor. Who knows where it could lead? The queen's eyes flashed dark as the bottom of a cooking pot. I will not have it, she declared. I will not have this. Nobody make a fool of our loyal family. We must put her back in her place. They huddled together like conspirators, voices low and heated. In that sunlit chamber, decorated with gold and ivory, a scheme began to take shape. The queen and her first 3 daughters plotted like warriors mapping out a battle. Their weapons would be whispers, tricks, and whatever mischief they could devise within the walls of the palace. As they schemed, Princess Aduri lingered just outside the chamber door. She had followed at a distance when her mother stormed out, worried and curious. Now, Aduri's heart pounded in her chest as she caught snatches of their heated words. Inside, the queen said, "We shall start by making her look incompetent. If her food embarrasses your father or our guest, you will have no choice but to remove her from the palace." A cruel smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "There is a royal banquet in 2 days to honor the New Yam festival. All the elders and chiefs will attend. That is when we will strike." Adu recovered her mouth to muffle a gasp. Strike? It sounded as though her mother was going to war, and the enemy was poor Asama. Aduri knew she had to warn her friend somehow. Inside the room, Princess Adana giggled. Perhaps a special spice might ruin her perfect dish. Princess Adak clasped her hands in malicious delight. Or a little accident in the kitchen. Imagine a pot tipping over at just the wrong moment. The sisters tittered at the thought of Asama's humiliation. The queen raised a hand to silence her daughter's eager chatter. "We must be clever. We will make sure it happens during the banquet, in front of all. Perhaps something visibly unforgivable." Her voice turned icy. "Adako, my child, you will..." She whispered the rest into her daughter's ear. Adako nodded eagerly, a wicked grin spreading on her face. Aduri, still peeking through a crack in the door, strained to hear, but she could only make out pieces. "Trip, soup, spill on the king, on me?" Aduri's eyes widened. They meant to cause an accident at the banquet and blame Asama. That much was clear. Suddenly, the door swung open wide. Aduri stumbled forward, caught off guard. The queen loomed over her youngest daughter, displeasure etched on her face. "Aduri, were you spying on us?" Her tone was dangerous. Aduri gulped but quickly steadied herself. She was small compared to her mother and older sisters, but she lifted her chin. "Mother, I heard what you are planning," Aduri declared, her voice clear and bold for a girl of her age. "It isn't right. Asama has done nothing wrong. You can't plot against her just because the king and prince like her cooking." Princess Adeze scoffed, stepping forward with a sneer. "Mind your tongue, little sister. This is grown folks' business. None of yours, so get out." But Aduri stood her ground like a tiny goat challenging older rams. "I may be young, yes, but I know what you are doing is wrong," she retorted, eyes flashing. "You always taught me to be fair, mother. How is this fair, eh?" For a moment, the queen was taken aback by her youngest daughter's courage, but she quickly regained her icy composure. "Aduri, this is for the good of our family. You do not understand. That girl is overstepping, and she must be put in her place." The queen's voice softened slightly. "I'm doing this for all of you." Aduri felt a surge of frustration. "All of us, or just your pride?" she dared to ask. Her sisters gasped dramatically at Aduri's bold words, as if the very air had been slapped. The queen's face hardened like clay left too long in the sun. "Enough, Aduri," she snapped. "Not another word. You will stay out of this. Do you hear me?" Her tone made it clear there would be their consequences for disobedience. Aduri trembled inwardly, but she did not back down. She squared her shoulders and declared, "I will not let you hurt Asama." Before the queen could respond, Aduri spun on her heel and ran off down the corridor. "Aduri, come back here this instant," the queen called after her, but the girl was already gone, her small feet pattering on the palace tiles. Princess Adeze shook her head. "That child has gotten out of hand." Princess Adako rolled her eyes. "She's always tagging after that cook like a lost puppy." The queen waved her hand dismissively, though her face was troubled. "Pay her no mind. Aduri is young and foolish. She will not interfere," she said, though in her heart, Queen Nneka felt a twinge of worry. Aduri had courage. A little too much, perhaps. The queen decided she would keep a close eye on her youngest daughter to prevent any meddling. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, whispers began to flutter through the palace like restless sparrows. Servants and attendants had sharp ears, and it wasn't long before small hints of the royal family's breakfast drama spread among them. In the courtyard, two old palace servants sat cracking melon seeds and gossiping in low tones. "Have you heard? The queen is furious about the new chef," one whispered with a toothless grin. The other nodded eagerly. "Oh, I saw her face at breakfast, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on." She imitated a cat that both snickered. "They say the prince hasn't stopped smiling since he ate that soup," the first woman went on, winking. "He looks at that girl Asama like she's a pot of honey he wants to gobble up." The second woman cackled, nearly spilling her seeds. "A prince in love with a cook? Ah, wonders shall never end." A young guard passing by overheard and tried to hush them. "Don't let the queen catch you saying that," he warned. "She will have your heads for such talk." The first old woman clicked her tongue. "It's true though. My niece works in the kitchen. She said the prince went there at dawn just to talk to Asama." The guard's eyes widened. "Truly?" "Yes, so," the woman insisted. "If a fly perches on your ear, it's because it has something juicy, and the flies around here have been busy." The two women laughed again. Unknown to them, one of the queen's ladies in waiting was walking by the courtyard. She caught only the tail of their conversation. The words "prince" and "cook" and "in love" stood out like big red flags. That was enough. She hurried away to report to the queen that tongues were wagging in the palace. By evening, almost everyone from the palace guards to the garden boys had heard an embellished version of the story. Some said the prince had gifted Asama a necklace at breakfast. Not true at all. Others claimed the queen left in disgust because Asama put a love potion in the soup. Also nonsense. The gossip grew wilder with each retelling. But one thing was clear. The bond between the prince and the royal chef was the talk of Umudike, and this only made the queen and her older daughters more determined to carry out their plan. Aduri stood her ground. That night, Aduri could not sleep. She tossed and turned on her mat, the mosquito net above her bed barely stirring in the warm air. Finally, she sat up, lit a small oil lamp, and made up her mind. "I won't let them hurt my friend," she whispered to herself, as determined as a little warrior. Aduri crept out of her room, careful not to wake her nanny dozing in a chair nearby. In the quiet halls, she made her way toward the small room at the back of the palace where Asama slept. The palace was silent, save for the chirping of distant crickets and the faint hoot of an owl. The young princess knew these walls well. She often snuck down to the kitchens for late-night mango slices or to chat with Asama when she couldn't sleep. Reaching Asama's door, Aduri knocked softly. "Asama," she called in a hushed voice, for Aduri had taken to affectionately calling her that, even though Asama was not of a royal blood. "It's me, Ada." After a brief rustle, the wooden door creaked open. Asama's face appeared, illuminated by the lamplight. She looked surprised to see the little princess at this hour. "Aduri, dear, is everything all right?" Asama asked, concerned in a gentle voice. Aduri slipped inside and closed the door behind her. Asama's room was humble and small, just a coat, a woven mat on the floor, and a shelf with a few personal items. A single oil lamp burned on the shelf, casting dancing shadows on the mud brick walls. "I'm sorry to come so late," Aduri began, "but I had to warn you." She took Asama's hand and guided her to sit on the coat together. Asama's eyebrows knit in worry. "Warn me? About what?" Aduri took a deep breath. She remembered the fierce look on her mother's face and the wicked glee of her sisters. "Mother and my sisters, they are plotting against you," she said in a rush. "They plan to embarrass you at the New Yam Festival banquet." Asama gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "But why? What have I done to them?" Her eyes shimmered with confusion and hurt. Aduri squeezed her friend's hand. "You haven't done anything, Asa. That's the problem. You have done everything right, and they don't like it. They are jealous because father and brother praise you. They think," she hesitated, then continued in a quieter voice, "they think brother might like you more than just as a chef." Asama's cheeks warmed, and she looked down. "The prince is kind to me, that's all," she said, though her heart gave a little hopeful flutter that she quickly pushed away. "I'm just a common girl who can cook. I could never be more in this world." Aduri frowned. "Don't say that. You're special, Asa, and you make people happy. Even father hasn't enjoyed a meal so much in ages until you came." The young princess spoke with the earnest sincerity of a true friend. A tear escaped down Asama's cheek. "Thank you, Ada. You are very kind, more than I deserve." Aduri hopped off the coat and put her hands on her hips, looking for all the world like a tiny determined queen. "You deserve kindness and more, and I won't let them hurt you. I told mother it was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. So tomorrow at the banquet, I will keep watch. If they try anything, I'll be there." Asama was touched by the child's bravery. She pulled Aduri into a gentle hug. "You have a brave heart, Ada. Oh, please be careful. I don't want you to get into trouble because of me." Aduri hugged her back tightly. "I don't care about trouble. I care about you. Besides," she added with a cheeky grin, "what can they do? I am the littlest. I have nothing to lose." Despite the seriousness of the moment, Asama had to smile at Aduri's spirit. It reminded her of her own little sister back in her village, who used to defend her whenever neighborhood children teased her. They spent a few more minutes whispering plans. Aduri described what she overheard, something about soup and spilling. Maybe they would try to make you spill soup or put something in it. Aduri guessed. "Be very careful when you serve, okay?" Asama nodded, absorbing every word. "I will. Perhaps I should make 2 pots of soup and keep one hidden, just in case the first is tampered with," she thought aloud. Aduri's eyes sparkled. "Oh, That's clever. Yes, please do that. And I will watch the table during the banquet. If I see Adako or the others doing anything strange, I will shout out, I promise. They giggled softly at the idea of Aduri shouting in the middle of the banquet. That would certainly shock the dignified guest. For a moment, the heavy worry in Asama's chest lightened. She saw hope in Aduri's bright eyes. Before leaving, Aduri reached into the pocket of her night dress and pulled out a small cowrie shell tied to a leather string. It was old and shiny from years of handling. This is my lucky charm, she explained, pressing it into Asama's palm. It was given to me when I was a baby. I want you to have it with you tomorrow. It will keep you safe. Asama opened her mouth to refuse. She knew how precious such a charm must be to a princess, but Aduri closed her hand over it firmly. Please, take it, for luck, Aduri insisted. Tears gathered in Asama's eyes again, but these were warm, grateful tears. I will treasure it, she whispered. Thank you, Aduri. With that, Aduri gave one last fierce hug and tiptoed back out into the hallway, disappearing into the darkness as quietly as she had come. Asama sat on her coat a while longer after Aduri left, staring at the little cowrie shell in her hand. She felt a surge of love for the courageous young princess who would risk angering her own family to stand up for what was right. Clutching the charm to her chest, Asama made a silent promise. No matter what happens, I will not let their hate turn my heart bitter. I'll remember the kindness of friends like Aduri and the prince. Eventually, Asama lay back down. She tucked the cowrie shell safely under the pillow. Though fear still fluttered in her stomach at what tomorrow's banquet might bring, she found herself smiling through her worries. Aduri's faith in her was like a light, keeping the darkness of doubt at bay. That night, Asama dreamed of dancing in a sunlit clearing, free and happy, with friendly faces all around. And in that dream, a little girl with a crown of flowers, Aduri, danced beside her, laughing. The day of the New Yam Festival banquet arrived with bright skies and a festive buzz in the air. The palace was abloom with activity. Courtiers and servants hurried to prepare the great hall. Colorful mats were laid out, drums polished, and flowers from the royal gardens arranged in tall vases. Outside, villagers gathered for daytime festivities of music, dance, and the ceremonial roasting of the first yams of the harvest. But inside the royal kitchen, Asama was focused on her own important task, the banquet feast. She remembered Aduri's warning well. All morning, she kept a watchful eye on her ingredients and cookware. She decided to prepare 2 large pots of yam and vegetable stew. One that she kept in the kitchen's back room as a safeguard, and one that she left on the hearth for serving. Only she and most trusted helper, an elderly cook named Oku, knew about the second pot. Aduri had popped into the kitchen earlier in the day under the pretense of craving a snack. In reality, she wanted to check on Asama and give an encouraging grin. "Be careful, my friend," she whispered quickly when no one was listening. Asama had nodded and mustered a brave smile. By late afternoon, as the sun began to dip, the first guests arrived in the great hall. Local chiefs in their ceremonial robes, village elders, and important traders. The king greeted them warmly, dressed in his royal attire. The queen, radiant in a red and gold wrapper with a coral beads around her neck, played the gracious hostess, her smile hiding the anticipation of the spectacle she hoped would unfold. The 3 eldest princesses stayed close by her side, looking prime and proper, but exchanging secret glances with each other as they waited for the right moment. The prince sat near his father, greeting the arriving guests politely. Though he tried to pay attention to the elders' stories, his mind wandered to Asamma. He hadn't seen her since morning and hoped she was all right. He had noticed the tension at breakfast and the queen's fury. Something in his gut made him uneasy about tonight. At the long banquet table, everyone settled into their seats. There was lively chatter as the first courses were served. Roasted yam slices with spicy sauce, fried plantains, and other delicacies. Asamma's special soup was to be grand centerpiece of the meal, served in a beautifully carved tureen and poured over pounded yam fufu for each guest. At last, the moment came. Two attendants carried in the heavy clay pot of soup from the kitchen and placed it on the serving table. The aroma filled the hall, rich with the scent of yam, uziza leaves, and tender goat's meat. There were appreciative murmurs from the guests. Many had heard of the king's talented new chef and were eager to test her cooking. Asamma followed behind with a tray of garnishes, her heart pounding but her face calm. She wore a clean white apron and kept her head modestly bowed. From across the hall, she caught Aduri's eyes. The young princess was seated next to her sisters, fidgeting slightly with nerves. Aduri gave a tiny nod, and Asamma felt the cowrie shell tied at her waist for luck. Everything will be all right, she told herself. Queen Nneka stood and raised a hand for attention. Esteemed guests, she announced with a gracious smile, welcome to our New Yam Festival banquet. Tonight, we are delighted to share with you the talent of our palace chef, Asamma, who has prepared a very special soup to bless the new yam harvest. All eyes turned to Asamma. She blushed as a few politely clapped. The prince smiled proudly at her, and even the king gave a nod of encouragement. Asamma, my dear, the queen said sweetly, why don't you come serve the king's bowl yourself? It would honor us to be served by the creator of this wonderful dish. Asamma's stomach flipped. Normally, servants did the serving. It was unusual for the cook herself to personally serve the king. But she could not refuse the queen in front of everyone. She stepped forward, lifting the heavy laddu. Yes, your majesty, she replied quietly. A palace maid brought out the king's golden bowl. Hands steady, Asamma carefully dipped the laddu into the pot. The soup steamed, perfect and savory. She poured until the bowl was full of the rich orange broth, chunks of yam and meat visible just below the surface. She then walked toward the king at the head of the table, carrying the bowl with both hands. Time seemed to slow as Asamma took each step. The entire hall watched. The only sound were the soft footfall of her shoes on the floor and the crackling of torches on the walls. She was just a few paces from the king when it happened. A slim foot, Princess Adaku's foot, slyly stuck out from under the tablecloth, right in Asamma's path, unaware of the trap. Asamma's sandal caught on the princess's outstretched foot. With a startled cry, Asamma stumbled forward. The golden bowl launched. In a split second, steamy hot soup flew out of the bowl in an arc. It splattered all over the queen's front before she could gasp, and then onto the floor with a loud splat. For an instant, the hall was completely silent, as if the drums of celebration had all stopped at once. Queen Nneka's beautiful blouse and wrapper were drenched with bright orange soup, dripping with yam chunks and greens. Her mouth hung open in shock. A bit of goat's meat slid sadly from her shoulder onto the floor. She looked less like a queen and more like a colorful soup pot that had exploded. Ah! The queen shrieked as the hot liquid seeped through her clothes. My skin, I'm burned. Though it was more the shock than any burn. The soup was hot but not scalding by then. Guests jumped up from their seats. Some guards rushed forward uncertainly. Princess Adako quickly withdrew her foot and put an expression of pure innocence, as if she had no idea what had happened. Princess Adeze and Princess Adana began loudly exclaiming, "Oh goodness, how clumsy, and what a disaster!" making sure everyone's attention was on Asama. Asama was horrified. The empty golden bowl had clattered to the ground, and she stood frozen, hands trembling. "My queen, I'm so sorry," she cried out. She grabbed a napkin and moved toward Queen Nneka, wanting desperately to help pat away the soup now dripping onto the floor. The queen's shock quickly turned into rage. She jumped up from her seat, knocking over her chair. "Stay away," she roared at Asama, her voice echoing in the hall, her eyes blazing with fury as she looked at the young chef. "You clumsy, foolish girl." Aduri was on her feet too, staring in dismay at the scene. She hadn't seen Adaku's foot. No one had except those immediately nearby. But something told her this was no accident. Aduri ran towards her mother. "Mother, are you hurt? It was an accident," she started to say, trying to intercede. But the queen, drenched and humiliated in front of all the kingdom's elite, was beyond listening. "An accident?" she cried, her voice shaking with anger. "This is an outrage. In all my years, I've never been so insulted." By now, the king had risen as well, though more slowly, his face thin and pale with shock. Servant brought towels and began dabbing at the queen's dress, but she hardly noticed them. She pointed a finger at Asama. "She did this on purpose," the queen proclaimed to the whole assembly. "This was no accident. That girl meant to humiliate me." Asama felt as though she had been slapped. No, never, my queen," she pleaded, dropping to her knees. Tears welled in her eyes. "It was an accident. I would never, ever harm you." Princess Adeze stepped forward, face full of feigned shock and anger. "How could you be so careless, Asama? Look what you have done to my mother," she scolded. "Such disrespect," added Princess Adana loudly, fanning the flames. "Perhaps the power has gone to her head. Being praised so much, she forgets her place." At this, the gathered guests murmured amongst themselves. Some were sympathetic to the queen, others frowned, not knowing what to believe. The prince finally shook off his surprise and hurried to Asama's side, helping her up gently by the arm. "Mother, please," he said. "I'm sure it was an accident. Asama nearly fell." But the queen cut him off, her voice ringing out. "Silence! I will not stay quiet." She glared at Asama and the prince standing together. Her chest heaved with emotion. Part, genuine outrage. Part, the thrill of seeing Asama in trouble as planned. This girl has shown nothing but insolence. Perhaps all those compliments made her bold enough to try to make fool of me tonight. Aduri tugged on the king's sleeve. "Father, it wasn't on purpose, I'm sure. I think I saw..." She hesitated. Should she accuse her own sister openly? Adako was standing calmly now, pretending to comfort their mother by holding her arm. Aduri's heart pounded, and she felt tears of frustration in her eyes. "Father, Asama would never do that deliberately," she finally said, loud enough for those near to hear. The king raised a hand, signaling for calm. Slowly, the chatter died down until only the crackle of torches and the queen's angry huffs filled the silence. The king's face was grave. He looked at Asama, standing there trembling and drenched in her own soup up to her knees. Then at his furious wife, And then, at the worried faces of his guests and children, "Asamma," the king said, his deep voice echoing, "What have you to say for yourself?" Asamma stepped forward shakily and bowed her head. "Your Majesty, I am truly sorry. My hand slipped and..." She caught a glimpse of Princess Adako behind the queen, the subtle triumphant smile on her lips before it vanished. Realization struck Asamma. She had tripped, but on what? Someone's foot. She looked at Adaku's feet, peeking from under her gown. One sandal was askew and soup-stained on the toe. Understanding flooded Asamma's face. But what could she do? Accuse a princess in public? No one would believe a cook over a princess. And she had no proof, only a suspicion. Tears spilled from Asamma's eyes. It was an accident, my king," she said again softly. "I lost my footing. I would never disrespect the queen or anyone here, I swear it." She dropped to her knee once more, bowing her head low in gesture of complete apology. "Please forgive me." For a moment, sympathy flickered in the king's eyes. He was just a man, and he had come to like Asamma's humble nature. But the queen let out an indignant huff. "We do not need her crocodile tears," she exclaimed. "My king, you must take action. All our guests have seen this travesty. If you do nothing, they will think the royal family can be insulted by a mere kitchen girl without consequences." Around the hall, some guests nodded, others looked uncomfortable. The king felt the weight of all those eyes on him and the pressure of his wife's glare. The prince gripped Asamma's shoulder protectively. "Father, maybe we should just dismiss her for the night, not with neck whirled in on the prince. And you, defending her now? Have you no loyalty to your own mother's honor?" The prince fell silent, jaw clenched, torn between loyalty to his mother and his concern for Asamma. Aduri wiped her own eyes and suddenly piped up in a loud, clear voice. "It was not Asamma's fault. I'm sure someone tripped her." "Aduri," the queen snapped, truly furious now. "Enough from you. You defend that girl one more time and I will have you sent from this hall." This shocked everyone. Never had the queen threatened to banish her own child from her presence. Aduri bit her lip, tears flowing freely now, but she stepped back. She was powerless now to help, and it made her tiny fist ball up in anger. The king looked at his family, divided in this moment, his wife shaking with rage and embarrassment, his older daughters fanning the flames, his youngest daughter crying and begging Macy for the chef, and his son standing stunned, heart in his eyes as he gazed at Asamma. The hall waited for the king's judgment. Finally, the king drew himself up. His face became stiff and formal, the way it looked when he made pronouncements in court. "Asamma," he began loudly, "you have committed a grave offense tonight. However unintentional it may have been." He swallowed hard. "The honor of the royal family must be upheld. Therefore, I have no choice but to severely punish this negligence." The prince's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to protest, but one glance from his father silenced him. Aduri openly sobbed now, shaking her head in disbelief. The king's voice did not waver, though a shadow of sorrow passed through his eyes. "Asamma, you are hereby banished from the royal palace of Omudike. You will leave at once and never return."